So, thanks for joining, and panelists, thank you for giving us an hour of your time or so this afternoon. So let me introduce everyone that you see here. Start with Kamal Dugiraga, who's a moderator. And there are two reasons why his profile makes me particularly happy. So one, he's from Goda. And two, I found out this morning that we may be distantly related. So. Which is important once I finish reading his profile. So Kamal is the CEO of Alpha Omega, a financial software company. He was previously CEO of Bara Inc., B-A-R-R-A. He has a BTech in mechanical from IITM and an MBA from UC Berkeley. When he was IITM, despite the statewide prohibition, he regularly acquired beer and alcohol, which I think is a badge of honor, obviously. Then we have Paritosh Rajora from IIT-K, graduated from IIT Kanpur with a degree in chemical engineering, used his engineering background for several years before moving into finance. He's currently a finance professional with Prudential. He's very much into singing old Hindi songs and karaoke. And he has also sung on radio. He enjoys hikes on weekends and is a lifelong vegetarian. He's also interested in the spiritual aspects of life. Okay. Then we have Ravi Anaparthi. I guess he was in Narmada also. Yeah. So Ravi has 15 years of capital markets experience, including a stint as a portfolio manager at Passport Capital, where he managed over $300 million in assets. He also has an MBA from UC Berkeley and an MS from the University of Iowa. He currently advises several fintech and blockchain companies, and is an active investor in crowdfunding, commercial real estate, and blockchain. Fun fact, he's a big fan of Warren Buffett and made the pilgrimage to Omaha a couple of times. Other than all of his investing lessons, which are incredible, he is most impressed by how cheap something is, which means that he looks for value in everything, not just investing. Okay? Then we have Sagar Pushpala, who used to be in Saras. Gola was better.
You're better in sports. Much better in sports.
Sagar is currently the Vice President of Business Development for Specialty Technologies at TSMC. He is a strategic advisor with a broad technology and ops background. He was previously the CEO of TSI Semiconductors, a niche specialty analog mixed signal foundry focused on technologies and manufacturing services. For the last 30 years, Sagar has held many executive and senior level positions across operations, engineering, and technology management positions at many analog and mixed signal semiconductor companies in the Bay Area. He was an operating partner at Costa Ventures and continues to serve in board and advisory roles for many system and device companies. On weekends, you'll find him at coffee, lunch, and wine settings progressively through the day, learning about new businesses and how they operate.
So Kamal and I work on the wine and the beer.
I'll try to join you guys. Sagar was president of Iitmaana during the 2016-2017 term. He has a BTech in chemical engineering from IITM and an MS in chemical engineering from the University of Kansas. Sagar's first stage act was at a Pan-IIT Diwali Dhamaka in the Bay Area about 15 years ago. He claims that he roped in his kids to perform their first dance sequence at the event, and they haven't stopped dancing since. Then we have Chirag Diora, who's one of whose parents or both of whose parents went to IIT?
Just dad.
Okay.
I did Diora.
Is he even here?
So Chirag, like I said, his dad, and he's on this panel with another panelist, Sucheta or Inky Diora. His mom. Is currently a VC investor at Battery Ventures, focused on early and growth stage enterprise software. Previously, he did M&A at Oracle and TMT investment banking at Barclays. He graduated from the University of Illinois in 2012. During the weekdays, he lives in San Francisco. And that brings us to the last person on the panel today, Chirag's mom, Sucheta Deora, who goes by Inky. Sucheta is the spouse of Ajit Deora, an IIT alum from the 1980 batch.
Saras.
I didn't say my husband who used to be in Saras. Inky is from Jodhpur, but grew up in Indonesia and speaks the Malay language. After marriage, Sucheta moved to the US, earned a BS in accounting from San Jose State University and raised 2 boys. She was on the committee of Rana for a few years. She founded 2 new postal annexes. Ignorant as to what that is.
Yes.
Okay. 2 fun facts about Sucheta Inky. She considers herself a smarter investor than the 3 men in her life. And she's also a twin. So with that, Kamal, over to you.
And she's got good taste.
Very good taste.
Okay, everyone here okay with the mic? Yeah. Okay. So this panel, we're going to be talking about money. Hope despite your lunch, you're able to keep up. How to make money and hopefully how to not lose too much. And the way we're going to do this, as you can see, there's a diverse set of backgrounds here, some from financial services and some not. We'll go through a series of questions for the panelists, and each of them will speak to their personal experience with investing, in response to that question. And once you hear some of the panelists respond to the question, we'll take audience questions on that topic before going on to the next one. Okay? So first question, and I'm posing this to the panel, is how did you invest at different stages in your life? And the way we've kind of broken it out, 25 to 35, where you're beyond the student budget, 35 to 50, and 50 plus. If you're well beyond 50 plus, this panel may be too late for you. So,
I'll leave, man.
So with that, Paritosh, you want to kick it off?
Sure. So first off, whatever I'm saying is my own views. I don't represent Prudential here, just so that it is clear. Okay, so how did I invest from 25 to 35? I really didn't invest. All I did was I had money going into 401k, and I was learning more about investment at that time than anything else. So I didn't even buy a home at that time. So but I did get educated. I did start getting educated earlier on by reading some of the economical, like Wall Street Journal, and then Investor Business Daily. These are still my 2 favorite places to understand investments. From 35 to 50, I started to, I bought my primary home, and I have 2 homes in the Bay Area, so in that time I did do that. I also learned about stock investment, so I had become educated enough that I was not looking for the cheapest $10 stock looking to go up. I had learned that you should buy good stocks and all of that. So I did buy some good stocks like Facebook and Apple and Amazon and Google, and of course I missed a few of them, so that's part of the thing. The other thing which I did earlier on was I started to realize the value of insurances. And I started to use insurance not just for death benefit protection, which I advise everybody should have, is also to use investment vehicles using insurance products. And so that's something which I understood that. And I started to do some cash balance kind of investments into these kind of products. So that was my journey from 25 to 35, from 35 to 50. After 50, I was already in the financial business, so I had understood much more after that. And then my investments became more sophisticated. I started to invest in alternative investments, so REITs and some leasing companies and other kind of stuff which I started to do. But mostly these are all, registered products. I didn't invest in non-registered products. So Also, I realized the value of annuities, which I used to hate them, because if all you do is read in the newspaper, that's all you hear. But I realized the value of an annuity also, and so I use that also as a vehicle for like a safe investment. And now I'm at the point where I'm buying my long-term care insurance actually. And this is the other thing which I'm realizing is the value of these insurances is very critical. And timing is everything. I mean, I cannot tell you enough how much important is timing in life and these things, that you have to do it at the right time. If you don't do it, you will mostly regret about not doing it. So those are the things which I learned in my investment cycle.
Sucheta, you want to go next?
Yeah. Yeah, so what was the question was?
How did you invest, from the different stages, including your business,
Yeah. So, well, initially, I'm a traditional, like a mom, stay home, because my husband, right from day one, said, okay, I'm just going to start a startup, and then, we need to penny pinch and things like that. And obviously, I didn't have any money for daycare. I had two boys to raise. So I stayed home, and then, because I came from a financial background, I was always interested in finance. So I said, okay, what better not to do but to start investing in stock market. So while the kids were growing up and he was busy in the startup and trying to grow that, I said, okay, let me do stock market. And after that, then this was around, I was 20s. And then when I was 30s, luckily that played off a startup, and then we said, okay, I'm going to build a home. And when he says, well, I don't have the time, I'm going to go another startup. So I said, okay, fine. Then I take it over, and then I started building a home, and then raise the kids, did stock market. Then our kids were growing up, and now it's about time I also, try to do something, to match up to what my husband was doing. I said, well, if you're doing a startup, I'm going to go and do a franchise business. Because, when I want to be, run a business and things like that. And then, so we got 2 licenses for postal annexes. I built it out from ground zero to profitability in like 3 years. It took me 3 years to settle my business. And it was a lot of hard work. And I'm glad I did it, because I think it gave the kids, both my boys, a perspective on how to also run a business. They did, I know my oldest son, I was going to India, and I said, hey, come for training. I showed him how to run the business. I said, I'm going off to India, you come and take care of it. He was in high school at that time, and he came and took over the business for 10 days. I came back, and my clients are like telling me, you know what, yes, was that your son out here? I said, yeah. Well, he said, he did a great job. He had music on, he was dancing, I said, oh, really? Because I never had music on. Then I realized, it's like, it's a good training ground for my boys also, as I was growing up. And, and then finally, after the business, I said, after a few years, this was in when I was 40s, I said, okay, enough of this. Then we sold my business. After making $250,000 sales, I come up to that revenue, found a nice buyer, really got busy selling it, and sold it. And then I finally said, okay, I'm going to go relax, and then went back to stock market, because at that time, 2012, market was still down. And I said, okay, now I need to maybe get back into the market. And I also realized after owning the business that, hey, I want to become a landlord too. It's probably easier than managing a business. So then we went and got, I said, okay, I'm going to invest in some rental properties. And then I'm glad that we did that, because that's also paying off, because we bought it at that time, and now eventually the market is turned around and is doing well. And I think as you retire, now we realize I don't want to be that risky anymore. Enough of him starting up and me trying to do the same thing. And now going into real estate, which is much more passive income, and it's easier to manage as you grow older. And we invested in India, and we invested in here, and I'm busy managing that right now. So phasing down a bit. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Chirag, you're up.
Yeah, sure. So I'll also give some disclaimers. So I work in an institutional investment arm. I don't actually, I'm not a personal financial professional. And also, my views are also my own. Actually, how many here are between the age of 25 and 35? Just out of the sense. Okay, good handful. So I think between all of us here, I think we all probably have different views on how to invest. So my views are very much what I think. I think I'm supposed to be here to be the wide-eyed and bushy-tailed among the six of us. But I think generally millennials get a pretty bad rep when it comes to saving and investing. I think people tend to think that we just save money, spend on expensive trips and experiences. But I think there are two important things to think about. I'm 28. When I got into college was 2008, so kind of the very bottom of the financial crisis. And when I was getting into the workforce, things were starting to turn around, and ever since then, things have only been good. My entire career has all been a bull cycle. I've known nothing but a bull cycle. And I think we're all very cognizant that it's a 10-year stretch right now, and it's the longest stretch in American history. And at some point, it's going to come to an end. So it's something that we keep very much in mind. And the other thing is, speaking from someone that lives in the Bay Area, cost of living has gotten to be very expensive. So sometimes retirement isn't the first thing we think about. We think more about how to plan for tomorrow and the month after and the year after. But aside from that, I think generally you'll find that millennials tend to be excited about the prospect of investing if they can get past the point of, can I afford my rent tomorrow? But then the thing they think about is, we're at the peak of a bull cycle, is now the right time? The argument would be compounded interest is something that you want to keep in mind so that if you invest early, eventually that's going to pay dividends. But it's tough to have the position to know that you're investing at the top of the cycle. So generally, you'll see a lot of millennials thinking, should I be holding in cash? I think even today there's an announcement that the yield curve was inverting. I think that has people scared, saying, is now the right time to invest, or should I wait till the recession hits and then should we involve ourselves then? But then aside from that, I think the way millennials think about investing is very different than other generations. You know, we live in the gig economy now. We're used to access at our fingertips. We're used to things being very quick and easy to process. So we're looking for easy ways to invest. You know, the days of the travel agent is over in the same way. We don't want to call 800 to talk to a financial advisor. We want to find easy ways to invest, and that's why platforms such as Robinhood that have had such success, because no commissions, it sort of gamifies the experience, and you know, the grass is green, so we play outside. It's easy to just push a button, buy a share of Facebook, and then see how it goes. So Robinhood's really changed that game, but on the side, I think, aside from individual equities, you'll find that millennials tend to want to diversify their portfolios. So things like index funds and ETFs have really kind of gained steam, because you see a steady rate of return with things like the S&P, you see a steady rate of return with the NASDAQ, but ultimately we know that if a recession hits, we want sort of a steady platform. And I think we're generally aware that individual equities tend to be a little bit riskier. That's why platforms like Robinhood make it sort of fun, where you can trade in and out a little bit, but you won't generally see millennials holding those positions for a long time. But you will see them hold index funds for a longer time. You will see them hold ETFs for a longer time. So it is something people think about, but I think people are generally aware that the majority of your wealth is accumulated in the back end of your career rather than right now. So at 28, you know, you said 25 to 35, so I'm in the very beginning of that cycle. I'm not worried about my retirement future today. I'm worried about getting through the next 5 years and starting to put some aside. So I do the standard things like 401k, I do standard index investing, but it's not the thing that keeps me up at night. I think there's a lot more going on in the Bay Area that makes me worry. But I have a long way to go, so I can only speak to 3 years of the age range you mentioned.
Perfect, thank you. It might be a good point to take some questions, depending on, you don't have to announce your age, but you can ask questions that you think are appropriate for your stage. Yeah.
Can someone
Can
someone comment about option selling as a way to generate income for retirement?
I don't mind repeating the question, yeah. Can someone comment about option selling options as a way to generate income?
Well, options is a good way to generate income. There's nothing wrong with that. The only problem I have is, I mean, if you have a reasonable sized portfolio, I would not bet a lot of money on something like this. So there are other ways, good ways to generate income too. So options is a guy who is probably older guys, doesn't have a job right now, want to keep busy, this is a good way to do that. But in my opinion, and it's a good way if you are doing like covered call writing and those kind of things. So there's nothing wrong with that. They are safe place. But I would not put a whole lot of portfolio into that. That's my only issue.
Yeah, I don't have the mindset to get into individual stock investment, so I've given it to, I think, Schwab and one other company. Hey, manage it, keep it safe. You know, I don't want my principal to go down and I'll live off the interest of the service. And so far so good, they've been managing that. I'm sort of assuming that standard rule of 4%, you know, assuming that it works over time, and on real estate I'm assuming 1% increment over a period of time. A real estate mostly in India.
So is that the return you're expecting or?
No, that's my distribution is my real estate, which is mostly in India,
Yeah.
I'm assuming a growth of 1%.
Right.
And on my liquid assets, I'm assuming a growth of 4% on which I live. That's it.
Yeah, and I think the
That's
4%, the 4% rule, I think, you know, is commonly stated, right? I think that makes sense. What you're doing with giving the money to Charles Schwab or things like that, right? I think that also makes sense. I think Chirag talked about millennials using a lot of online platforms to invest and not necessarily talking to financial advisors, right? When maybe you don't have as much savings and as much assets, I think that's a perfectly fine strategy. But as you accumulate assets, I think financial advisors get a bad rap. But I don't personally use financial advisors because I have some professional background and so I manage my own money. I hate paying 1%, but for a lot of people who have assets, I mean, most people in the Bay Area, I think, would have home equity or other, reasonable amount of assets. You should talk to a financial advisor. You should, trusting robo-advisors, in my view, is not that great because it's very unsophisticated. How Betterment and Wealthfront and Robinhood, how they manage, it's just fairly unsophisticated, and they're doing very simplistic rebalancing, and which you can do it yourself. So a good financial advisor, I think, is actually somebody who can manage your money is an important aspect which is overlooked, or people don't want to pay the fees, so they end up missing a lot of good advice, I would say.
No, I think what I'm saying is it's a mindset issue. My attitude is I'm a salesman. And with the time I'll save money, I can sell much more of any service that I want to sell. Because I'm very good at selling. But when it comes to sitting there on the computer and trying to figure out, oh, I put some money here, I put some money there, I just don't have the mind to do that. And that's why I gave it to Schwab. I say, hey, just keep it safe. I'm okay with that.
That makes sense for most people.
So my question was. My question was over the next business cycle, that is between 2020, post I guess a small recession, between 2020 and 2030. How do you see each of the sectors, that is, standard equity investing, fixed income, real estate? How does the panel see all these in what I guess is the age where you have maxed out Federal Reserve, maxed out fiscal policy, everyone's over-borrowed, wealth exists in the hands of a few. So how do you see investing for the next 10 years?
I can start. I want to put that.
Okay, yeah, you can start. Yeah.
So I agree with you that it's there's a lot of asset inflation, right? So low interest rate cycles that Fed, all the Feds globally have run. There's a lot of, I guess, extended valuations in stock market and in real estate and even bonds. I mean, talking about 2% 10-year yield, right? 2.5%, and there's only so much more. You've had a benefit of bond yields going from 15% in the 80s to like 2.5%. So of course they made coupon money, but they also appreciated in value, right? So that tailwinds are probably less likely, so you get your 2%, 2.5% coupon, but there is no appreciation in the bonds that you would expect. So my view is that the potential for expected returns across asset classes is going to be low. Near term, I think there might be a recession, right? Shiva talked about the inverted yield curve, right? Last week it did invert. Usually the business cycle, I guess historically, it's been a very good indicator that recession is coming. How long it takes is, not sure, but typically like a year or so. So near term, you have to be cautious, right? So you have to have more cash in hand. You have to have, maybe if you're investing, maybe invest more towards the debt. If you're the first in line to get paid and get some additional money, that might not be a bad deal, right? So investing in bonds is probably not a bad deal. The chart back here talks about, I think, different asset class returns in the different decades, right? So, large cap, small cap, micro cap, those are all equity, developed markets, emerging markets. So you've seen that, there's wide variation in equity returns, right? If you invest in 2000s, you made no money in stocks at all, right? And bonds and real estate was actually a pretty good place to be, consistently.
Is the next bar, what is the 2020 to 2020?
Well, so I think over a period of decades, some of the returns might look something similar. I don't think, I have a view, but I don't think I can predict what's going to happen. Right? So, but in general, you can see that the bonds will give you, rather than 5%, my view is that it will give you 2%, 3%, right? Because we are at 2.5%, there is no further appreciation in bonds. We are in a low growth world in general. So the bond yields, I don't think are going to go up a lot, but you get your 2% rather than 5%. Rather than equity is giving you 10%, which have historically done, my view is that they probably do like 6, 7%, right? So expected yields, returns for all these asset classes, in my view, are going to be lower. I think that's where one of my personal favorites is alternative investments, right? So there's private real estate, whether it is venture debt, there are a few other asset classes I can go, or those are still not as efficient, illiquid, so you're not going to necessarily, it needs to be invested for longer periods of time, right? That is, in essence, how more sophisticated investors, institutions, family offices invest. They have a higher percent of, alternative asset classes. So I would focus and try to get access to some of that.
Just a comment, maybe I can add something. I think it goes back to the previous question actually covered last. I think there's a time and place for investments depending on which age group you're in. You can't just say one works for one group or the other. When you start off very early, so I call this layered investments. When you start off very early, you want to make sure you maximize your 401ks and got everything else in place. Start to dabble in equities and you can get to feel how the market works. Then when you get into a stage, you get married, you've got kids, you've got your education plans in place, you never know. $500,000 pre-tax is what you have to set aside for a good college education for kids these days. It's not small money. They have to get into an MIT or a Stanford, you got to set aside $60,000 a year, right? And then there's pre-tax, over $500,000. So think through all that and maximize all that first. Then start to layer things like annuities and retirement. And I'm a big fan of real estate. I've dabbled in real estate literally for the last 25 years, across the nation and some in India as well. So that's big, and if you look at these here, these numbers speak to themselves. Those, I don't think, are short-term tools. You've got to look at this in a long-term horizon. And it's reasonably liquid from that standpoint. You can get out anytime you want, unlike stock. When you really think about selling it, you think about selling it at the low point, right? So I think start to layer these things, annuities, then you start to get into the age where you're in the 40s and 50s, insurance. Life insurance that actually pays you over time, not necessarily afford debt, right? So that's how I think about investments in personal finance over time.
Okay, we'll take one more question. Yeah, some more questions.
So I'm in the age group where I love Robinhood and investing on a quick basis, but I also don't have a lot of money to lose. But I'm also in an age where I need to educate myself to make sure that when I have the right amount of money, how do I make sure that I'm using the timing appropriately? So does Iitmaana have some platforms where we can utilize the expertise of people like you, or maybe there's some mentorship programs that we can get access to?
Naren, can you speak to that? Does Mana have any formal platform for
What is that?
people to get financial
The
education?
question was, does
investing
Mana
education?
have any platform for?
Mana takes donations. That was not the question I'm
No, I
asking.
think you can come to the Mana events, that's the other thing. Come to the Mana events, network with people, figure out who does what and how they manage things over time. You know, I help some folks mentor
What was
as
the
well.
question?
The question was if there was any platform for us to talk, for people to learn about financial investing on a more regular basis.
Not yet. Let me say it's not yet, but if this is an interest area, then we can, Mana is open to taking on such trivial tasks and making it big. But what we need is people to come on the other side and say, I'm willing to help, I'm willing to mentor. This is a good set of people, but I'm sure that there's a lot more who got a lot of other experience. And you don't have to be a drain on your time. It has to be a pleasure to do it, and it's something that, you can do on a one-on-one basis. Like Sagar says, he meets people, has coffee, wine, dinner, whatever, right? So it could be things like that that happen. So that's
IIT startups needs it. You say mentors, IIT startup needs mentors. Lots of-
Okay, yeah, we all need mentors, yes. Yeah. We all need mentors and mentees, both, so.
There are a lot of financial blogs you can,
Okay,
my personal favorite is this thing called Financial Samurai.
Okay.
It's like a local Bay Area based, and so he does a wide variety of topics, including investing. I would strongly recommend you actually go to one of the Warren Buffett annual events.
okay.
It's when you do something like that, you end up reading a lot, preparing for that, and I think you immerse yourself. Eventually, there's nobody else who can figure out what's best for you, right? So it's stage of your life and your goals, and right. So in a way, educating personally, I think I understand that some of these things can be complex and take our time, but I would recommend those two resources.
And the other thing also is that we would like to have more focused sessions. See, this is a big event. It takes a lot of effort to organize this, get a bunch of people, and then people have interest in certain areas, right? Whereas if we have a focused event, have 20, 30, 40 people in a room and talking only on that, then you get a lot more opportunity to network, to learn, to mentor, and whatever. So that's, I think, another area that we could explore as benefiting the alumni family broadly.
How do you consider 529 education savings plan versus taking a loan on the cash balance insurance, which is considered as a smart investment strategy?
I can handle that. So I believe 529 plans are a great way for people who can start early. So when your kids are like less than 5 or so, is a good time to start a 529 plan. Many people don't realize, and many people don't even have the money, but the reality is in a 529 plan, you can put 5 years worth of money, each parent. So about $150,000 each kid can be put right away. And that money can keep growing in a tax-free manner for education, okay? So 529 plan is a good way to invest. It's not like a speculative platform or something. It is designed for more of like a conservative investment. Life insurance plans are different in the sense they also need a runway of about 15 years or so to get the money out. And so if your time horizon is less, then it's a bit subjective, I would say. So still they have a lot of value. The advantage of a life insurance plan is that it can be used to fund your own retirement in a tax-free manner. So there is it can be used for your kids' education, plus it can also be used to fund your own retirement. But there is a cost to the life insurance, so that you have to understand. Whereas there is almost no cost to a 529 plan. So I would definitely weigh towards 529, but it has to be done earlier on.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
I have one question.
Yeah.
I have a question on short-term investments. So we all know that long-term investments can pay off. You leave the money, let it grow. But then there's also you need to keep aside some safe money, right? So which could be 6 years, 6 months of living expenses. And if you talk about Bay Area, 6 months of living expenses can easily be 50,000, right? So what do you do with that cash? Do you leave it in cash? I mean, in past 7 or 8 years, if you left that kind of cash, you have lost out on a lot of returns. So any thoughts on short-term investments with, say, safe money, which you don't want it to go down too much?
I'll tell you what's worked for me. I think just keeping the 6 months in CDs or cash I think it's worth compared to the risk of losing some of the stuff. So for me, it's a peace of mind. My family does it. My wife does it even without me knowing it, right?
There are short-term bond funds which are available, and you can buy short-term ETFs. So ETFs are much more efficient. You can take the money out, it's like a stock. So if your horizon is just 6 months or so, I would also advise you to consider ETFs which are in the short-term bond kind of funds.
It's not federally guaranteed though.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah, they are not guaranteed.
If you do, Ally, some of these online banks, they give you like 2.4, 2.4%. That's, I think, is a pretty reasonable return. Some of the mutual fund, money market funds, I think, what Pareto was talking about, they give you a little bit more yield, but depends on the federal guarantee on that.
One fund that you can invest is in QQQ or TQQ. It's a pretty steady technology fund. And if you look at the chart over a period of last 20 years, I've seen it like quadrupled, So it's a steady income, steady fund that goes up. It's been going up. So that's another thing that you can look at.
I have a question. I hear that everyone is talking about probably like what are the good successful strategies. Like I didn't hear how you dealt with your failures in investing.
Many failures. This meeting is not enough for the failures.
No, but I guess that would help us learn how to deal with it.
Good point. Well, let me start with one. There are some places that I've invested that I haven't done much research in. I've known the people, I've trusted the people and put money in. And I've stayed back and I've lost some of it there. So it's very, very important that you do your own diligence no matter who the other party is when you're investing, right? So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect is, depending on where you are, which time of your career or your path, don't double down and take risks when you're running short. Make sure you stay conservative. When you start to go and say, chasing money when the market's looking hard, those are the things that sometimes can bite you the wrong way. So those are the two things. When you trust people, make sure you absolutely understand why you're investing, for what reason, not just because you know somebody.
I've always thought investments are always open to the right.
Can somebody tell us about your personal experience with the 2008 crash? Did any of you actually get caught on the wrong side? If you did, or if you did not,
So I personally got lucky. I went into a long-term annuities that stayed. I pulled most of my cash out. I was in cash, just totally lucky. All stars lined up, and I got lucky. And then I went into the annuities that gave us very good returns, 6-7% guaranteed returns.
Annuities meaning like stocks?
No, they invest in long-term annuities, fixed annuities.
So there is a class.
I'll tell you why I'm asking this question. I'll give my example, what I went through. It's possibly what he's asking you about. I had invested in a bunch of stocks and mutual funds, different kinds of things before they happened. And as the thing was about to crash started, I had friends of mine in the banking industry, and those guys told me this is going to be really bad. It's going to be terrible. It's going to be as bad as the last Great Depression. Get out of it. Right? So I took 20% cut. I lost 20%, I came out of the market, right? And stayed in cash. Stayed in cash, and then Obama did his magic, whatever, Bernanke did his magic, slowly things, market started coming back up. And I stayed out of the market continuously because my friends told me, hey, this is just a cat, dead cat bounce, it's going to go right back, don't go to the market, right? So I stayed long enough in the market, and at one point in time I said, shit man, this, it's gone up too much, I'll wait for it to crash, it never crashed. Now, so you will end up catching the thing at tail because you waited long enough, and after some time you say, look, what the hell, man? How long am I going to wait? Right? And you start going into the market, and God forbid, it happens again. Right? So, any advice and insights on that would be helpful.
Which batch were your friends from? Okay, go ahead. Yeah. Take some responsibility.
Like I've noticed that I also So I also trade the stock market, and I've noticed it's generally a 5-year graph. So 5 years is down, 5 years is up. So that's rule of the thumb. It could be 5 to 7 years. If you go back and look at all the charts, that's generally the rule of thumb. So if you know it's at the peak time, maybe time to get out. And next 5 years could be down. So since we have had such a big run from 2012 to 2018 now, it's about time maybe the market is going to be heading down. It's just just a note. But I've been looking, always notice the charts, go back few years and see where the chart is going. Is it an upward trend? And if it's been up for a long time, chances are it's going to come down again for some time.
It's 10 years. It's 10 years and more now. Just 3 years. Just 3 years more than that. It's a little more.
But the other point is the 401ks, right? Those are pretty much tied up. Those have seen the thought, right? 401k is becoming a 41k and it's come back up, right? So that is fixed. You ride the wave and they recover pretty well quickly. But the other areas, how can you predict all this stuff? You have to look at some indicators and balance your portfolio. You can't be stuck in one area or the other.
See, what about you talked about the fixed annuities, right? We're supposed to get you some good return, like 6%. So in the case of annuities, can you take your principal out?
Not in the case of annuities, can you take your principal out? Was the question.
So there are different kinds of annuities, first of all. So there are fixed annuities, there are variable annuities, there are index annuities. It all depends on the kind of annuity we are talking. Most of the annuities are a bit non-liquid in nature, depending on the annuity which it is. Like the shortest annuity time may be 3 years, 5 years, 7 years. Those are and then there are lifetime annuities which guarantee you an income for life. So when we are talking of annuities, generally they are not like liquid right away or something. But many of the annuities have a feature of withdrawal of the money. About 10-15% can be taken out every year without any kind of penalty. So if you have $100,000, you can take $15,000 out of it. It still keeps doing what it was supposed to do, and at the end of the annuity, you get whatever is promised to you. So that's what it is. So there's not a one answer, but annuities by nature are non-liquid because you are pooling the money of many people into this insurance company pool, and these guys are managing the money for you. So that takes the burden away from you. And you are slightly protecting against the risk of big downturns. That's what it is.
I have a very quick question.
So I think we'll stop here, but the panelists will be available.
So let's take this last question.
Okay. Yeah.
And then we will.
We are speaking about the financial crisis, etc., right? So on that note, what's your comment on the Jack Bogle strategy of stay the course no matter what? Like set aside 6 months of living expenses, etc., and no matter what happens, ignore all the short-term turbulence, and regardless of what's happening, just blindly stay the course. Is it a sustainable strategy? Like from past data, you can interpolate any segment and it's successful. Like, what's your take on it as a future investment strategy?
I think in our case, what we've been through, we invested in an annuity, like these guys talked about, and that was long time back, almost 20 years. In the 20 years period, market has gone down 2 times, dot-com burst and then subprime crisis. In spite of that, we have an annuity, will be getting 6% return at retirement time, and it has really paid off in spite of the downturn of the economy. So I think if you invest in instruments like this, at least for down the road. Right now, you can go through rough period if you're crunched for money, but if you invest in long-term annuities, retirement plan, you'll be fine, even if the markets go up and down.
It's your percentage of allocation to volatile markets. That's the way you should think about it. Depending on the age bracket you're in. You're getting close to your 50s and 60s, you better have a very small percentage open to that, right? That's how you start. When you're very young, 20s and 30s, mine was up and to the right, off the charts, high risk, all the way, right? All stocks, right? That's kind of how you manage over time.
So one thing I learned is investment. Don't look at your account every day or even every week or something. That is your enemy.
Yeah.
So invest for long term. Just buy it and forget it. Do the dollar cost averaging. That is your friend.
And with your 1% of the money, that's where you play.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay, I think we've had a wonderful panel here. I specifically want to call out Chirag because although you saw only 6 hands going up, I can tell you there are a lot of silent hands of parents who have got millennials. And I think there's going to be some table talk happening. Hopefully it's accepted from the other side. So I really appreciate all of you being here. Let's give them a nice round of applause.